The first man to walk on the moon wasn't the loudest voice in the room. He wasn't a showman. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't even the kind of hero who enjoys being called a hero. Neil Armstrong was something much quieter, a man whose life kept pulling him toward the edge of the impossible, and who kept stepping forward anyway. Long before the world watched him land a spacecraft on another world, he had already lived 1,000 small moments of discipline, risk, and precision, moments that shaped the kind of human who could stay calm when the sky tried to kill him. His story doesn't begin on the moon. It begins in the American Midwest, with a boy who loved two things deeply: airplanes and silence. Silence mattered to him. It was where concentration lived. It was where he could think, and thinking, for Neil, was as natural as breathing. He was born in 1930 in Wapakoneta, Ohio, a town small enough that most people never leave its orbit, but Neil always looked upward. As a child, he built aircraft models obsessively. He studied their shapes, their wings, the invisible physics that made them fly. At 6 years old, he rode in an airplane for the first time. It didn't frighten him, it changed him. He didn't shout, he didn't laugh. He simply stared out the window quietly, as if the world had finally shown him where he belonged. That fascination stayed with him through adolescence. While other kids chased noise, Neil chased understanding. He read aviation manuals the way other children read adventure stories. He memorized aircraft specifications. He imagined the feeling of lifting off the ground under full control. That quiet obsession carried him all the way to Purdue University, where he studied aerospace engineering with the precision of someone assembling a puzzle only he could see. But the world had other plans. The Korean War erupted, and Neil, still barely more than a teenager, left school and became a Navy aviator. Korea became the first arena where his calmness under pressure revealed itself. He flew 78 combat missions. On one of them, enemy fire tore a wing apart. His jet wasn't flying anymore. It was falling. Most pilots would panic. Neil didn't. He guided the wounded aircraft for as long as physics allowed, never losing control, never losing the calm that later defined Apollo. At the last possible moment, he ejected. He survived. And then, still bleeding adrenaline, he returned to flying. Not because he was fearless, but because fear never controlled him. After the war, Neil joined what would later become NASA. There, he became one of the best test pilots on Earth. He flew experimental aircraft so dangerous that other pilots joked you needed both courage and insanity just to get inside them. The X-15 was one of them, a rocket-powered needle that climbed toward space and came back down faster than most humans could think. Neil flew it with his trademark precision. On one flight, the X-15 climbed too high, bounced off the atmosphere, and overshot its landing zone by miles. The aircraft was barely controllable. Most pilots would have lost it. Neil didn't. He guided it back, landing on the dry lake bed at the very edge of survivability. When he climbed out, his heartbeat was steady. He spoke softly. He analyzed the data. Because Neil Armstrong did not experience danger the way other people do. Where others felt chaos, he felt equations. Where others saw risk, he saw variables. Where others panicked, he listened to silence. By the time NASA began selecting astronauts for Apollo, Armstrong wasn't just a pilot. He was the rare kind of human who stayed composed when machines, physics, and probability were all working against him. Apollo 11 wasn't just a mission. It was a decision that someone, a real human being with a heartbeat, would have to step onto another world. NASA needed someone who could do that without trembling. Neil Armstrong wasn't chosen because he was famous. He wasn't chosen because he was charismatic. He wasn't chosen because he wanted the spotlight. He was chosen because of how he reacted when everything went wrong. Because in Apollo, things always went wrong. And on July 20, 1969, as the lunar module descended toward the moon, things did. The computer overloaded. A 12:02 alarm flashed. Then 12:01. The landing site below was a crater field, deadly boulders, uneven terrain. Fuel was running out. In mission control, tension thickened the air. This wasn't a simulation. If Neil hesitated, they would crash. He took manual control. He flew the lunar module like a helicopter, skimming across the surface at low altitude, searching for a patch of ground flat enough to survive. Every second drained fuel. Every meter brought new risks. Buzz Aldrin called out data. The world held its breath. And then, Neil's voice, steady, controlled, unshaken. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The eagle has landed, humanity exhaled. Only a man born for silence could speak like that as the fuel gauge dipped into seconds. Stepping onto the moon was many things: a political victory, a technological triumph, a historical moment. But for Neil Armstrong, it was something quieter. It was the culmination of every disciplined hour he had spent in the air. Every calculation, every narrow escape, every decision made in the cockpit of a machine trying to fall from the sky. When he climbed down the ladder, the world was not just watching, the world was waiting. Waiting for his foot to touch dust older than all of human civilization. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. People remember the words, but the silence that followed, the silence of another world, defined Neil more than any sentence could. He didn't shout, he didn't pose, he didn't claim the moment. He collected samples, performed experiments, measured, observed. He was on the moon, and he behaved as an engineer. Because that's who he was, not a symbol, not a celebrity, but a man doing his job in the most impossible environment ever reached. After Apollo 11, Neil could have lived as a legend. He could have filled stadiums, led political movements, become a permanent face in the media. He chose something quieter. He left NASA. He taught engineering. He spent time with his family. He avoided fame with the same determination other people chase it. Reporters often struggled with him. They wanted the myth. He gave them the truth. He didn't believe he owned the moon landing. He believed the world did. He once said he hoped history would remember the thousands of people who made Apollo possible, not just the 3 who flew it. Humility in the face of greatness is rare, but Neil Armstrong carried it naturally, because he never saw himself as larger than the mission. He saw himself as part of a system, one engineer among many, one pilot chosen by a chain of decisions, one human carrying out a job. But history remembers differently. History remembers the quiet figure who stepped into lunar silence and made humanity bigger. Not because he wanted to be a legend, but because someone had to take that step. Someone calm, someone steady, someone who didn't tremble when the impossible arrived. That was Neil Armstrong, a man who walked on the moon, and then chose to walk back into a quiet life. A man who changed history and never tried to own it. A man who showed that sometimes the greatest leaps are taken not by the loudest voices, but by the quietest ones, the ones who listen to silence and follow it all the way to another world. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as inspiring as we do, please consider subscribing for more tales of incredible people who changed our world. See you next time.